What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Naruto get Temari pregnant, Chunin exam? If you enjoy this what if, then please like, share and do comment. So let us start the story.
The wind over Kanehagakure carried an unease that no patrol report could properly explain. It slipped through the streets, over rooftops, and into the highest office of the village like a quiet warning that something vast and merciless was already on its way. Minato Namikaze stood by the window of the Hokage's office, his cloak hanging loosely from his shoulders, his reflection faintly visible in the glass. The village below looked peaceful, too peaceful. Lantern light flickered in narrow streets, and somewhere far away, someone laughed, unaware that the night itself had begun to hold its breath. Behind him, Hiruzen Sarutobi sat at the desk he had once ruled the world from, his aged hands folded, his eyes heavy with a wisdom that felt more like a burden tonight. Jiraiya leaned against the wall nearby, arms crossed, his usual careless grin nowhere to be found. The room was thick with unspoken truths. "They confirmed it," Jiraiya said at last, his voice lower than usual. "Whatever's coming, it isn't wandering. It's heading straight here." Minato didn't turn around immediately. He watched a single ANBU flicker across a rooftop like a shadow being chased by another shadow. "How long?" he asked. "Less than an hour," Jiraiya replied. "Maybe much less." Minato closed his eyes. So it had finally decided to move. Hiruzen exhaled slowly, smoke from his pipe curling into the lamplight. "You've prepared every barrier we have. Evacuation routes are ready. But even so, some things cannot be stopped with walls and seals alone." Minato turned to face them, his blue eyes calm on the surface, and storm-tossed beneath. "We both know what it is," he said. "And we both know what it wants. The Nine Tails." Even speaking the name in one's thoughts felt like dragging a blade across the village's throat. Hiruzen studied Minato carefully. "There are techniques sealed away for a reason," he said at last. "Techniques that solve one disaster by creating another. You're not thinking of using that one, are you?" For a moment, Minato said nothing. Jiraiya's gaze sharpened. "Minato, if it reaches the village," Minato said quietly, "and if we can't stop it any other way, then yes, I am." The silence that followed was heavy enough to bend the air. Jiraiya pushed himself off the wall. "You're talking about a seal that demands a life, and not just any life." His jaw tightened. "You already know what that means." Minato's hands clenched, then relaxed. "There's only one kind of vessel that can endure that much power without tearing itself apart," he said. "Someone whose chakra system is still forming." Hiruzen's eyes widened slightly, though he had already guessed. "A newborn?" Minato looked away. "I won't ask another family to make that sacrifice," he said. "I won't turn someone else's child into a cage." The words hung in the air like a confession and a sentence passed at the same time. Jiraiya's voice was rough. "So you're going to do it yourself?" "I am his father," Minato replied. "If someone has to carry that burden, then it will be my son." Hiruzen's grip tightened around his pipe. "And the price for that seal is your life. You know that. You won't be there to guide him. You won't see the man he becomes." Minato's lips curved into a faint, sad smile. "I already know I may not see him grow up," he said. "Kushina's condition alone makes tonight a gamble. This village, my family. Everything is balanced on a blade's edge." For a second, the mask of the fourth Hokage cracked, and what stood there was simply a man afraid of the morning. Then he straightened. "If I fall," Minato said, meeting Hiruzen's eyes, "I'm asking you to watch over him." Hiruzen nodded slowly. "And not just as a Jinchuriki," Minato continued, "as a hero, as someone who saved this village, even if he never understands how. Jiraiya let out a bitter laugh. You're asking for a miracle, you know that? People don't always thank the thing that keeps their nightmares locked away. I know, Minato said. That's why I've prepared something. He moved to his desk and placed his hand on a sealed scroll, its surface marked with complex, interwoven symbols. My will, he said. If I don't survive tonight, it explains what must be done, what he must be given, and what steps to take. If the village turns its fear on him instead of its gratitude. Hiruzen inclined his head. I will honor it. Jiraiya walked forward and placed a hand on Minato's shoulder, gripping it tightly. And if you're not there, he said, then I will be. I'll make sure the kid learns how to survive in this world. I'll make sure he learns how to fight in it too. Minato looked at him, something like relief passing through his eyes. He'll need someone reckless enough to teach him that, he said softly. Jiraiya snorted. Someone has to keep the tradition alive. They shared a quiet, heavy moment. Teacher and student, comrades bound by more than rank. Far away, a deep, distant rumble rolled across the land. It wasn't thunder. The lamps in the office flickered. An ANBU appeared in a swirl of motion, dropping to one knee. Hokage-sama, he said, voice tight. The barrier teams report a massive chakra signature approaching at extreme speed. It's already at the outer perimeter. Minato closed his eyes for a single heartbeat. Then he opened them, and the storm inside had become steel. Begin evacuation protocol, he said, and tell the medical team to be ready. He paused. And tell them to prepare for a birth. As he stepped toward the door, another tremor shook the building, stronger this time. Somewhere in the darkness beyond the village walls, something ancient and hateful was smiling. And high above Konoha, the night sky itself seemed to split, as if the world were about to be torn open. The southern watch line was quiet in the way only doomed places ever were. Torches burned steadily along the wall, their light barely pushing back the vast darkness beyond. 2 ANBU stood on a high outpost tower, silhouettes against the night. Still, alert, listening to a world that had begun to feel wrong. One of them shifted his weight nervously. He wore a hawk mask and standard ANBU armor, his messy blonde hair sticking out at odd angles beneath the straps. Beneath the mask, his eyes kept drifting toward the horizon, as if expecting it to move. Beside him stood someone far younger than anyone else in the Corps had any right to be. Itachi Uchiha. 13, he was already a captain. His mask, styled like a pale cat, hid a face far too calm for a boy his age. Long black hair was tied back neatly, and a short blade rested across his back, untouched but ready. He stood with perfect stillness, as though the night itself had learned to hold its breath by watching him. This place feels like a grave waiting to be filled, the blonde muttered. Hey, Itachi, do you think any of us walk away from tonight? Itachi didn't answer right away. He was watching the distance, not with his eyes alone, but with something deeper. The air itself felt heavy. Chakra flowed wrong, like a tide pulling back before a wave meant to erase coastlines. Whether we survive isn't the important part, Itachi said finally. What matters is whether the village does. The blonde snorted. You always say things like that. You're 13, you know. You're allowed to be scared. Itachi's eyes narrowed slightly behind the mask. I am scared, he said. That's why I'm paying attention. He raised a set of binoculars and scanned the dark plains beyond the wall. At first there was nothing. Then he saw it. The horizon wasn't dark anymore. It was moving. A vast, crushing presence rolled across the land, bending trees, flattening hills, and warping the very flow of chakra around it. Even from this distance, It felt like staring at the shadow of a god that hated everything that breathed. Itachi lowered the binoculars. "We're already late," he said. The blonde stiffened. "You see it." Instead of answering, Itachi grabbed him by the shoulder and turned him toward the south, pressing the binoculars into his hands. A second later, the color drained from the boy's face. "That's not a beast," he whispered. "That's a disaster." "It's both," Itachi replied. The blonde swallowed. "We should warn the Hokage." "You will," Itachi said. "I won't." "What?" "I'll move the ANBU and start clearing civilians," Itachi said calmly. "If we wait for orders, people will die." Before the blonde could argue, the space in front of him rippled, and Itachi was gone. "I really hate it when he does that," the blonde muttered, already turning toward the rooftops. The Hokage Tower was alive with tension. Hiruzen and Jiraiya were still inside the office when the door opened and an ANBU in a hawk mask dropped to one knee. Minato was already on his feet. "It's here, isn't it?" he asked. "Yes, Hokage-sama," the ANBU said. "The chakra signature is unmistakable. It's advancing fast. Captain Itachi has already begun mobilizing the ANBU and evacuating civilians." "How far?" Minato asked. "Several miles. But at its speed." The ANBU hesitated. "We don't have much time." Minato nodded once. "Good initiative. Tell the Jonin commanders to move to their positions immediately. And inform Itachi that I want 3 full ANBU squads dedicated only to evacuation and sheltering." "Yes, sir." The ANBU vanished. Jiraiya exhaled slowly. "That Uchiha kid. He doesn't think like a child at all." "No," Hiruzen said quietly. "And that may be the cruelest fate of all." Minato didn't comment. His thoughts were already elsewhere, with Kushina. He turned toward the window as another distant tremor rolled through the village, rattling glass and setting birds screaming into the air. "I need to see her," he said, and then he was gone. Far beyond the walls, something enormous and hateful continued to approach. And in the hospital, Kushina Uzumaki cried out in pain, as 2 unstoppable forces began their final march toward the same point in time. The hospital was the most heavily guarded place in the village, and still it felt far too fragile. Minato appeared in a flash of light in the corridor outside the sealed delivery chamber. The air was thick with chakra and tension, barrier tags glowing faintly along the walls. Inside, hurried footsteps and strained voices overlapped with something far more personal. Pain. He pushed the door open and stepped inside. Kushina Uzumaki lay on the bed. Red hair spread across the sheets like fire, her face pale with sweat and strain. Medics moved around her in a controlled rush, their hands glowing with medical chakra. One of the nurses nearly jumped when she noticed him. Hokage-sama. Minato turned, startled for a moment, then gave a sheepish smile, rubbing the back of his head. "Sorry, didn't mean to scare anyone." The nurse flushed slightly. "You can come in, sir. She's been asking for you." "Thank you," Minato said, then hesitated. "And I'm sorry, I don't think I caught your name." "Hitomi," she said quickly. "Thank you, Hitomi." He moved to Kushina's side just as another wave of pain hit her. She clenched her teeth, eyes squeezing shut, and her hand shot out, grabbing his with terrifying strength. "Minato," she hissed, "if this is your fault somehow, I'm haunting you." He laughed nervously, even as his fingers began to go numb. "I'll take that risk." "Don't joke," she snapped, then cried out again as the medics urged her to focus, to breathe, to push. Minato stayed right there, whispering encouragement, feeling every second stretch into something endless. Outside these walls, A monster was coming. Inside, his entire world was fighting to be born. And then, a cry. Small, sharp, alive. For a moment, the room seemed to forget how to breathe. "It's a boy," Hitomi said softly, carefully lifting the child and wrapping him in a blanket before bringing him over. Minato stared. His son. He took the tiny bundle into his arms, hands trembling despite all the battles he'd fought, all the jutsu he'd mastered. "Hey," he said quietly, "so you're the one who kept us waiting." The baby squirmed, then made a small, confused sound. Minato touched a finger to the child's hand and felt it grab back. "Tight. Strong already?" Minato murmured, a faint smile breaking through the exhaustion and fear. "You're going to be trouble, aren't you?" He passed the baby to Kushina, who looked at her son as if the world had finally made sense. "Oh, you're perfect," she whispered, tears slipping from the corners of her eyes. "My little troublemaker." Minato wrapped an arm around her shoulders, resting his other hand gently against the child's head. For a few precious seconds, the world outside didn't exist. Then the air rippled, and Jiraiya appeared in the room. He stared down at the baby, eyes wide. "Ha! He really does look like you. That's unfair, you know?" Minato chuckled softly. "Don't worry. He'll get her temper." Kushina glared weakly. "Lucky kid." She nodded toward Jiraiya. "Go on. Let your godfather have a look." Jiraiya carefully took the child. His usual grin softened into something rare and sincere. "You know," he said, "I'm going to teach you some amazing things." Kushina's eyes narrowed. "If you teach him anything stupid, I will personally come back and haunt you." Jiraiya stiffened. Let's call it selective education." They shared a weak laugh. Then Kushina coughed. Once, twice. The third time her body jerked, and a thin line of blood slipped from the corner of her mouth. The room froze. "Kushina," Minato said, his voice suddenly tight. She tried to smile at him, and failed. Minato's heart dropped into his stomach. Somewhere far away, the Ninetales roared. And in the hospital room, the first shadow of true disaster finally fell. The room exploded into motion. Hitomi was already at Kushina's side, her hands glowing with medical chakra as she examined her. Her face went pale. "No," she whispered, then louder, sharper. "She's hemorrhaging." She spun and ran for the door. "I need help. Now." More medics rushed in. A senior doctor pushed past them and checked Kushina's pulse. His fingers lingered for a second too long. Slow, weak, fading. He straightened slowly, and Minato understood the truth before the words were spoken. "We can't stop it," the doctor said quietly. "Her chakra network is too unstable. Any aggressive treatment will only accelerate organ failure." Minato stared at him. "You're the best medical team in the village," he said, his voice beginning to crack. "There has to be something. Anything." The doctor shook his head. "I'm sorry, Hokage-sama." The world seemed to tilt. Far away, a deep, earth-shaking roar rolled through the village. The Ninetales had arrived. Minato clenched his fists so hard his nails cut into his palms. Kushina lifted a trembling hand and touched his cheek. "Don't make that face," she whispered, forcing a weak smile. "You're the Hokage. You're supposed to look confident, even when you're lying to yourself." Minato swallowed hard. "Kushina." "I know," she said softly. "I can feel it. I don't have much time." She coughed, and more blood stained her lips. "Minato, please. Don't use that jutsu unless you absolutely have to." His eyes widened slightly. She had always known him too well. He nodded, unable to speak. Kushina turned her head slightly, looking at the small bundle resting near her. Bring him to me. Minato carefully placed their son in her arms. She looked at the baby as if trying to memorize every detail in a single glance. Naruto, she whispered, that's your name, and you're going to be strong, stubborn, and kinder than this world deserves. A single tear slipped from the corner of her eye. I'll be watching you, she said, even if you can't see me. Her grip loosened. Minato took the baby from her arms, his hands shaking. He leaned down and pressed his forehead to hers. Thank you, he whispered, for everything. Kushina smiled, and then she was gone. The machines went silent. Minato didn't move. He stood there, holding his son, as the reality finally crushed down on him. Jiraiya placed a hand on his shoulder. Minato, the village. Minato closed his eyes. I know. In a flash of light, he was gone. He appeared in the Hokage's office, the room still vibrating faintly from distant impacts. Hiruzen turned toward him and froze when he saw his face. Sarutobi, Minato said, his voice empty and razor-sharp at the same time. Please watch over Naruto, just for a little while. Then he was gone again, leaping out the window into the burning night. He landed in the street, bit his thumb, and slammed his hand to the ground. Summoning jutsu, smoke exploded upward. A massive toad appeared, towering over the rooftops, pipe clenched in its mouth, sword strapped to its side. Oi, Minato, Gamabunta rumbled. You've got a lot of nerve calling me out at a time like this. Minato landed on his head and pointed toward the southern edge of the village. That's why. Gamabunta followed his gaze, and saw it. A mountain of hatred, a storm of claws and tails, eyes like burning suns. TCH, Gamabunta muttered. You do realize that thing can't be killed, right? Minato's jaw tightened. Then we'll do everything else. Gamabunta grinned. Heh. Figures. He leapt forward, the ground cracking beneath his weight. At the southern wall, Konoha's shinobi were already fighting a losing battle. Jutsu crashed against the beast's hide like rain against a cliff. Kunai, shuriken, explosions. Nothing slowed it. The fox's roar alone shattered buildings. Link and several others stood their ground, throwing everything they had, only to watch their attacks vanish into its monstrous form. It's not even noticing us, someone whispered, and then a massive shadow fell over the battlefield. Gamabunta landed between the village and the demon, shaking the earth. Minato stood atop his head, cloak snapping in the wind, eyes locked onto the Ninetales. The real battle had begun, and high above, hidden within the chaos of smoke and fire, something else was watching, waiting for the exact moment everything would break. The Ninetales did not slow. It did not hesitate. It did not even seem to acknowledge the attacks raining down on it. Its massive head turned slightly, and its voice rolled across the battlefield like thunder tearing through stone. Ants, the beast growled. You think noise and steel can stop me? His tail moved. Not fast, not slow, just inevitable. The enormous appendage swept through one of the outer towers like a god casually brushing dust from a table. The structure disintegrated. Wood, stone, and bodies vanished in a cloud of debris and red mist. The shockwave alone threw shinobi off their feet. We can't hold this line, someone screamed. We're going to die here. No, Link shouted, standing his ground despite the terror crawling up his spine. We buy time. That's the order. We hold until the Hokage arrives. Another roar split the sky. Then Itachi appeared beside him in a flicker of motion. What's the status? Itachi asked, eyes already scanning the chaos. Link didn't look away from the battlefield. Heavy losses. Whole sections of the wall are gone. About 30 confirmed down, maybe more. Itachi's jaw tightened. I finished moving the civilians. I'll start pulling the wounded back, he said. Before Link could answer, Itachi vanished again. Link knocked an arrow, drew, and fired. The shot cut through smoke and dust, and struck the Ninetails squarely in the face. For half a second, hope flared in his chest. I hit it, he shouted. The fox's eye shifted, and locked onto him. You, it said. The world disappeared in a blur of red and black. The tail came down. The section of wall Link stood on ceased to exist. He felt weightless, falling. The sky spun. The ground rushed up to meet him. His last coherent thought was not heroic. It was simple. This is going to hurt. Then everything went dark. Itachi returned to where the wall had been, and found only ruins. His eyes widened. Link, he called, already moving. He ran along the shattered remains, heart pounding in a way it never did on missions. Link! Nothing. Then he saw it. Half of a broken hawk mask, lying in the dust. His breath caught. He followed the trail of destruction, and found a body thrown far from the impact point. Link! He was there in an instant, dropping to his knees. Link's eyes fluttered open for a second. He saw Itachi's face. Then they rolled back. Stay with me, Itachi said sharply, gripping his shoulders. Don't you dare go to sleep. Link mumbled something incoherent. Itachi slapped his cheek lightly. Stay awake. He looked up and shouted, Medic! I need a medic here now. A team rushed in with a stretcher. Careful, Itachi snapped as they lifted him. His spine don't. They moved as fast as they could, disappearing toward the inner district. Itachi stood up just in time to feel another massive shockwave. A whole block of houses vanished in an explosion of fire and debris. He clenched his fists. Damn it! The battle was already beyond containment. And then, the pressure in the air changed. A familiar chakra signature crashed onto the battlefield like a falling star. Itachi turned, and saw him, Minato Namikaze, standing atop the head of a giant toad, eyes locked onto the Ninetails. For the first time since the attack began, Itachi felt something dangerous stir in his chest. Hope. But far above, hidden in the chaos, a masked figure watched the battlefield with a single visible eye, and smiled, because the real plan had only just begun. Fire and smoke swallowed the southern district. Itachi never saw the blast that hit him. He only felt the world flip. A crushing force slammed him through broken stone and burning timber, throwing his body into what remained of the wall. Pain exploded through his ribs and down his leg, sharp and absolute. His vision swam, the world reduced to sound and heat and the taste of dust. He tried to stand. His leg buckled. A broken breath tore out of his chest as he caught himself on a chunk of fallen masonry. Every inhale felt like knives scraping inside his lungs. Somewhere nearby, someone screamed. A child. Help! Someone! Itachi turned his head, searching through the smoke. Before he could take a step, another distant impact shook the ground. A building far away folded in on itself like wet paper. The screaming stopped. Itachi froze. For a moment, the world felt very, very quiet. He forced himself to move anyway, dragging his damaged leg, one step at a time, toward the small park his squad had been assigned to defend. He didn't make it. His strength gave out, and he collapsed onto a mound of rubble. From where he lay, he could finally see it. Everything, the entire sector was gone. Houses reduced to burning skeletons. Streets erased. The positions his squad had held, simply not there anymore. They were gone. All of them, except Link. And Link might not survive either. A cold, Hollow feeling spread through Itachi's chest, heavier than any wound. I failed. His vision drifted upward. Through smoke and flame, he saw it. The enormous silhouette of the Nine Tails, moving deeper into the heart of the village, each step leaving more destruction behind. His eyes began to lose focus. The last thing he saw before everything turned white was the village burning. 3 hours. For 3 hours, Konoha had fought a god. And for 3 hours, it had been losing. Minato stood on Gamabunta's head, breathing hard, his cloak in tatters, blood running down his side. He had thrown everything he knew at the monster, every technique, every trick, every ounce of skill he had earned in a lifetime. It hadn't been enough. The Nine Tails still stood, still laughing, still tearing the village apart. Minato closed his eyes. "So this is it," he said quietly. Gamabunta glanced at him. "You've got that look again, kid. Get me to the Hokage Tower," Minato said. "Now." Gamabunta didn't argue. He leapt. Minato crashed through the window and landed inside the office. Hiruzen and Jiraiya were already there. And Naruto. Minato stopped when he saw his son. For just a second, the world narrowed to that tiny, sleeping face. "I tried," Minato said, his voice hoarse. "Everything. It didn't work." Hiruzen's expression was heavy with understanding. He gently handed Naruto to Minato. The seal array was already prepared on the child's stomach. Jiraiya looked away. "Then this is really the only way." Minato nodded once. He turned and leapt back out the window. Gamabunta landed in front of the Nine Tails. The beast's massive eyes narrowed. "Still breathing?" it rumbled. "You're persistent, little human." Minato didn't answer. He carefully placed Naruto on Gamabunta's head and stepped forward. "This ends tonight," Minato said. He brought his hands together. The air changed. Something cold and absolute tore through the battlefield. The Nine Tails' grin vanished. "What is that?" it snarled. Chains of unseen force wrapped around it. Its massive body began to lift, dragged screaming into a swirling vortex of chakra. "No!" it roared. "You dare!" Its form began to compress, fold in on itself, becoming a storm of red energy. "Curse you, fourth Hokage!" the beast bellowed. And then, it was gone. The chakra storm vanished into Naruto's body. The night went silent. Minato dropped to his knees. Jiraiya and Hiruzen appeared beside him. "You did it," Jiraiya said softly. Minato didn't answer. He was already falling forward, coughing blood. He crawled to his son and lifted him gently. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I wanted to teach you so many things. I wanted to be there." He pressed his forehead to Naruto's. "But your mother and I will be watching. Always." He smiled. Then the strength left his body. Minato Namikaze fell back onto the shattered stone, his eyes finally closing. The fourth Hokage was dead. Far away, on a rooftop untouched by the battle, a masked man lowered his hand. His single visible eye watched the ruined village. "Interesting," he murmured, and then he vanished into the smoke, leaving behind a child who now carried a monster, and a fate far heavier than any infant should ever bear. 6 years had passed since the night the sky burned and the earth screamed. 6 years since the Nine Tails had torn Kanehagakure apart. And 6 years since Naruto Uzumaki had been given a life he never asked for. The village called it a day of remembrance. Naruto called it the day he had to run. He sprinted through narrow backstreets, lungs burning, sandals slapping against stone as angry voices echoed behind him. He didn't need to look back to know they were there. He could feel them. Their hatred always felt heavier than their footsteps. Today was always like this. Every year, the villagers never forgot. and they never let him forget either. Today was also his birthday. Naruto knew that because the third Hokage had once told him. Very gently, very carefully, like it was a fragile thing that might break if said too loudly. Other kids had cakes, families, presents. Naruto had bruises. He had been thrown out of the orphanage a year ago. They said he was old enough to take care of himself. He knew that was a lie. They just didn't want him there anymore. Didn't want to sleep under the same roof as him. Since then, he lived alone in a small, dusty apartment the Hokage had arranged for him. The landlord hated it. The neighbors hated it. But no one dared argue with the old man in the tower. He got a small allowance every week. Enough to eat. Enough to survive. Not enough to belong. There were only 2 people in the whole village who treated him like a human being. Irika-sensei and the third Hokage. Naruto thought of the old man like a grandfather. Irika like an annoying but kind older brother. Everyone else looked at him like he was something that should never have been born. He turned a corner too sharply. Pain exploded in the back of his leg. Naruto screamed and fell forward, skidding across the ground. He looked back. A kunai was buried in his calf. For a second, he just stared at it, confused, like his brain refused to accept what his eyes were seeing. Then the shouting got closer. He tried to crawl, tried to stand. His leg gave out. They were on him in seconds. Hands grabbed his jacket and threw him back down. A kick slammed into his ribs. Another hit his shoulder. Something hard cracked against his back. Naruto curled into himself, arms over his head, teeth clenched. Pain came from everywhere. Boots, fists, stones. Someone laughed. He tasted blood. "Please," he sobbed. "Please stop. It only made them angrier." "Why?" Naruto cried, his voice breaking. "Why do you hate me?" A heavy kick drove the air out of his lungs. He gasped, choking, eyes wide as he rolled onto his back. He saw their faces then. Not monsters, not demons, just people. And that somehow hurt more. One man stepped forward, his eyes red with fury and grief. "Because of you," he shouted, "my son never came home." He punched Naruto in the stomach. Naruto gagged and coughed, blood splattering onto the dirt. A woman pushed through the crowd, her face twisted with rage. "My husband died that night," she screamed. "You're the reason." She threw a rock, cut across Naruto's cheek. He cried out, tears mixing with dirt and blood. "I didn't do anything," he sobbed. "I swear. I don't even know what you're talking about." But they didn't hear him. Or maybe they didn't want to. To them, he wasn't a boy. He was a memory, a grave, a walking reminder of the worst night of their lives. The beating went on. Naruto's world shrank to pain and noise and the desperate wish that someone, anyone, would make it stop. And high above, in the Hokage Tower, an old man felt a sudden, heavy ache in his chest. Because somewhere in the village, a child was being punished for a sin he never committed. And he was already too late. A few streets away, a tall man walked alone beneath flickering lantern light. His dirty blonde hair was longer than it used to be, tied back loosely, strands falling around a face that had seen too much in too few years. A sword rested across his back, not for show, never for show. His blue eyes were sharp, but tired. Link no longer wore an ANBU mask. He no longer wore the uniform either. After the night of the Nine Tails, he had healed quickly. Too quickly, some said. Itachi hadn't been so lucky. His wounds had kept him out of action for more than a month. And then Itachi had slaughtered his own clan. The memory still burned. 1 year ago, Konoha had lost more than a family. It had lost one of its greatest prodigies. and Link had lost the last person who truly understood what that night had done to them. Itachi was gone, branded a traitor, an S-rank missing Nin. And Link was done. He was on his way to the Hokage Tower to make it official, to turn in what remained of his credentials, to walk away before this village hollowed him out completely. Then he heard the shouting. Angry, ugly, familiar. He stopped, turned the corner, and felt something cold and furious settle in his chest. A crowd filled the street, and at the center of it, a small, broken boy curled on the ground. Naruto Uzumaki, the Jinchuriki. Link's hands slowly clenched into fists. He had pulled Naruto out of situations like this before. Once from a group of drunk civilians. Once from a shopkeeper who decided to teach the demon a lesson. Once from a mob not much smaller than this. But this was almost the entire street. Disgust twisted his expression. "So that's how it is," he muttered. He vanished. In the next instant, he reappeared between Naruto and the crowd. His fist snapped out and sent the nearest attacker flying backward into several others. The street went silent for half a second. Link drew his sword, not threateningly, not dramatically. Just ready. Someone lunged with a kunai. Link knocked it aside and struck the man's wrist with the flat of his blade. The weapon clattered to the ground. The attacker collapsed, screaming and clutching his hand. "Get away from him," Link said coldly. They didn't listen. They never did. Another man rushed him. Link sidestepped and swept his leg out from under him, dropping him hard. "This is getting worse every year," Link growled. A second shinobi appeared beside him in a flicker of movement, another former ANBU. "What's the situation?" the man asked, already blocking an incoming attacker. "The usual," Link replied. "They're trying to kill a child to make themselves feel better. They fought without killing. Efficient, precise, disarming, disabling, throwing people back. But the crowd was big. Too big. They sent word," the other man said between strikes. "The Hokage is coming." "How long?" Link snapped. The man glanced up. "About now." A powerful pressure fell over the street. The crowd parted. Hiruzen Sarutobi stepped forward, his expression no longer that of a gentle old man, but of the Hokage who had survived wars. "What?" he said, his voice carrying like thunder. "Is the meaning of this?" No one answered at first. Then a drunk man stumbled forward. "We're getting rid of the monster," he slurred. "Doing what you're too scared to do." The air turned dangerous. The Hokage took a step forward. Link moved faster. In a blink, he was in front of the man. The sword's hilt struck the drunk across the jaw. Hard. The man dropped like a sack of grain. He wasn't dead. But he wasn't getting up anytime soon either. Someone in the crowd screamed, "You're protecting the demon. Kill it." Link turned slowly. His eyes were ice. "You want the demon?" he said quietly. "Fine." He took one step forward. The crowd flinched. "Look at him," Link continued. "That's a kid. Bleeding. Crying. Half-conscious. If you still see a monster there, then the problem isn't him." Someone rushed him from behind. Link moved without looking. The attacker hit the ground. Hard. "This ends," Link said. "Now." The Hokage's voice cut in like a blade. "All of you, leave, or I will have you arrested for treason against this village." That finally broke them. Not all at once, but enough. The crowd began to scatter, muttering, cursing, bidding. Link exhaled slowly. He turned and knelt beside Naruto. The boy was barely conscious. "Hey," Link said quietly. "Stay with me, kid." Naruto's eyes fluttered, and somewhere deep in Link's chest, Something he thought had died with the Uchiha clan stirred again. Because no matter how broken this village was, he wasn't going to let it break this child too. The man who had rushed forward earlier lay on the ground, clutching his stomach, shaking in fear more than pain. "Why?" he stammered, looking up at Link with wide, unfocused eyes. Link stepped closer and crouched down until they were face to face. "Because," he said quietly, his voice trembling with restrained fury, "the only monsters I see here are you." He stood up and turned away, sheathing his sword with a sharp motion. "I didn't come here to execute anyone," Link said coldly, loud enough for the crowd to hear. "I came here to stop a lynching." The man was dragged back by others, still alive, still whimpering. The street was silent now, heavy, ashamed. A hand landed on Link's shoulder. Hiruzen Sarutobi stood behind him, eyes hard but tired. "I understand your anger," the Hokage said, "and I won't pretend this doesn't disgust me. But if we start answering madness with slaughter, this village truly has no future." Link didn't argue. He just clenched his jaw. Around them, ANBU began to appear, one after another, dropping into position, surrounding the street. One of them lifted his mask slightly, spiky silver hair, a face mask, a forehead protector tilted over one eye. "Well," the man said lazily, "you still know how to make an entrance, Link." Link snorted. "Nice of you to show up, Kakashi. What took you so long?" Kakashi shrugged. "I took a wrong turn on the road of life." There was a brief, awkward silence. Hiruzen and Link both sighed at the same time. "Of course you did." The Hokage stepped forward, his presence suddenly crushing. "Every single person who participated in this," Hiruzen said, his voice carrying across the street, "will be held accountable. This is not justice. This is not grief. This is treason against the very principles this village was built on." Some villagers took a step back. Some tried to run. Hiruzen raised his hand. Too late. He snapped his fingers. Dozens of ANBU appeared across the rooftops and streets, cutting off every escape. Two figures stepped forward from the ranks. Marino Ibiki, his scarred face as terrifying as ever, and Mitarashi Anko, wearing a grin that promised nightmares. "Detain everyone involved," Hiruzen ordered. "They will be questioned, thoroughly, and they will face judgment." Anko's grin widened. "Oh, this is going to be a very productive evening." Ibiki cracked his knuckles. "We'll make sure they remember it." The ANBU moved in, grabbing the remaining villagers, binding them, dragging them away despite protests and screams. The street slowly emptied. Only smoke, bloodstains, and broken stone remained. And Naruto, Kakashi knelt beside him first. "He's alive. Barely." Link carefully picked the boy up, his movements far gentler than anyone would have expected from him. Naruto was light, too light. "Let's get him somewhere safe," Link said quietly. Hiruzen nodded. In a blur of motion, the three of them vanished. They reappeared in the Hokage's office. Naruto was laid carefully on a couch, medical staff already on the way. Link stood a step back, arms crossed, eyes shadowed. "This village is rotting," he said finally. Hiruzen didn't deny it. "I know." Link looked at the unconscious boy. "That's why I can't stay here anymore." The Hokage turned toward him sharply. "What do you mean?" Link's eyes were cold but tired. "I came to turn in my resignation," he said. "After tonight, I'm done." And somewhere deep inside Naruto Uzumaki, something old and dark stirred, as if it had felt the village's hatred and smiled. The Hokage's office was quiet in the aftermath. Too quiet. Link, Kakashi, and Hiruzen appeared in a flash, carrying Naruto between them. They laid him gently on the leather couch near the window, where pale sunlight filtered through the glass and fell across his bruised, blood-stained face. Naruto didn't stir. Hiruzen stood there for a moment, then let out a long, tired sigh and covered his eyes with one hand. Kakashi, as if on instinct, pulled out a small orange book and flipped it open. "Hospitals make me nervous," he muttered. "Offices too." Link didn't comment. He stood in front of the Hokage's desk, hands clenched at his sides, drawing in a slow breath. This was it. "Hokage-sama," Link said at last, his voice steady but heavy. "I need to talk to you." Hiruzen lowered his hand and looked at him. "Go on, Link." Link hesitated, searching for the right words. Then he decided there weren't any. "I want to leave Konoha," he said. "I want to resign as a shinobi and go out on my own." The room seemed to tighten. Kakashi paused mid-page turn. Hiruzen's eyes sharpened. "You're asking to become a missing nin?" "Yes," Link said simply. "Why?" Hiruzen asked. Link looked away for a moment, then back at him. "Because I'm tired. Tired of pretending this village is something it's not. And because there's something I have to do. And that is find Itachi," Link said, "and bring him back? Or at least find out why he did what he did." Silence. Hiruzen studied him for a long moment. "And after that?" he asked. "I want to live without chains," Link replied. "I want to find out where I come from. I've learned my parents weren't from Fire Country originally. There's somewhere else I need to look." Hiruzen leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. He knew this boy. He had known him since he was a child. He also knew this wasn't a whim. "You have no family waiting for you out there," Hiruzen said quietly. "No allies. No safety net." Link gave a small, crooked smile. "Never really had one here either, did I?" Hiruzen didn't answer immediately. His gaze drifted just slightly toward the couch by the window, toward Naruto. The boy's chest rose and fell steadily now. Even in sleep, faint traces of red chakra flickered and faded beneath his skin, knitting wounds that should have taken weeks to heal. Hiruzen closed his eyes for a moment. Then he made a decision. "Very well," he said. Link blinked. "You'll let me go?" "Yes," Hiruzen said, "but not without conditions." He reached into a drawer and took out an official stamp. Link tensed. "What kind of conditions?" Hiruzen looked at him directly. "I want you to take Naruto with you." The words landed like a stone dropped into still water. "What?" Link said. "I want you to get him out of this village," Hiruzen continued. "Train him, protect him, teach him how to survive. And when he turns 12, bring him back to take the Genin exam." Link looked at Naruto. Small, bruised, alone. "You're asking me to raise him," Link said quietly. "I'm asking you to save him," Hiruzen replied. Link didn't answer right away. He walked to the couch and looked down at the sleeping boy. This was the child the village hated. The child they feared. The child they were slowly destroying. "He'll have a target on his back everywhere he goes," Link said. Hiruzen nodded. "He already does." Link was silent for a long time. Then he exhaled. "All right," he said. "I'll take him." Kakashi finally looked up from his book. His visible eye curved into a smile. "Heh, sounds like you just became a very unwilling parent." Link snorted. "Don't push it." Hiruzen pressed the stamp down on the document. "It's decided," he said. "From this day forward, Naruto Uzumaki will be under your protection." Outside the window, the village continued on, unaware. And on the couch, a boy who had never had a home slept on, not knowing that his entire life had just changed. Naruto woke up to silence. Not the heavy, angry kind. The strange, careful kind. He opened his eyes and stared at the ceiling for a few seconds before realizing where he was. Ha! He sat up quickly and looked around. The Hokage's office. The big windows. The couch. The smell of old paper and smoke. Then the memories came rushing back. Running. Falling. Pain. The crowd. Naruto's hands clenched. TCH. He slid off the couch. Hey, old man. You here? Hiruzen looked up from behind his desk, relief crossing his face. Ah, Naruto-kun. You're awake. Yeah, Naruto said, scratching his head. So, what happens now? Hiruzen blinked, then smiled in a way that made Naruto uneasy. I think, the Hokage said, you should sit down first. Why? Because this is going to be a long explanation, and we don't have much time. Naruto frowned, but did as he was told, plopping down in the chair in front of the desk. 10 minutes later, Naruto shot to his feet. I'm leaving the village? He shouted. For real? Yes, Hiruzen said calmly. You'll be going with someone who will train you and keep you safe. You'll come back when you're 12 to take the Genin exam. Naruto's brain struggled to keep up. So I don't have to stay here? Correct. Naruto stared. Then, a huge grin exploded onto his face. So when do we go? Soon, Hiruzen said. The man who'll be taking you should be here no time, a voice said from behind. Naruto and Hiruzen both turned. Link stood in the doorway, travel pack over his shoulder. Naruto jumped. Whoa, where'd you come from? Link smirked. I walked. Naruto squinted. Liar. Link chuckled and walked over, placing a hand on Naruto's head and ruffling his hair. I'll explain things on the road, kid. Road. Naruto's eyes sparkled. We're really going? Really, Link said. Hiruzen stood up. You know the route and the precautions, right? Yeah, Link replied. I'll avoid fire country borders, keep a low profile, and make sure no one tracks us. Hiruzen nodded, then looked at Naruto. And you, try not to cause too much trouble. Naruto grinned. No promises. They turned to leave. At the door, Hiruzen called out, Naruto. Naruto looked back. Get stronger, the old man said gently. Naruto's grin softened into something more serious. I will, he said. Link and Naruto stepped out into the sunlight. And for the first time in his life, Naruto Uzumaki was leaving the village that had never wanted him. 6 years. That was how long Naruto Uzumaki had lived outside the village that had once tried to break him. And now, on October 10th, he was coming back. The massive gates of Kanehagakure stood less than 500 yards away. Link stopped walking. Naruto took a few more steps before noticing and turning around. Link-sensei? He had changed a lot in 6 years. The small, skinny, bruised child was gone. Naruto now stood a little over 5.5 feet tall, his face leaner, his eyes sharper. The childish roundness had been carved away by training, travel, and too many close calls. There was a confidence in how he stood now, even if it was still mixed with his usual reckless energy. And yes, he was still wearing orange. Link's eye twitched just looking at it. I told you, Link said for the 1000th time. That outfit is basically screaming, please aim here. Naruto grinned and tapped the hilt of the sword strapped across his back. A single-edged blade almost as long as his arm. Yeah, but it's my thing. Link sighed. He had lost that war years ago. So? Naruto asked. Aren't we going? Link was quiet for a moment. Then he rested a hand on Naruto's shoulder. This is where we stop, he said. Naruto froze. What? Link's smile was small, but heavy. This is as far as I can take you. Naruto's brows furrowed. Why? Just come in with me. Nobody's gonna. Link crouched down so they were eye level. I'm still a missing nin, he said gently. If I step inside those walls and someone recognizes me, it won't be an argument. It'll be an execution. Naruto's mouth opened, then slowly closed. Oh! He turned back toward the gates. The village looked the same, and completely different. So, Naruto said quietly, this is goodbye? Link shook his head. No, it's just see you later. We're not done yet. Not you. Not me. Naruto smirked. You and your instincts. They're rarely wrong, Link replied. He reached into his pack and tossed a small wrapped bundle at Naruto. Naruto caught it easily. What's this? Happy birthday, Link said. Naruto blinked. For a second, his vision blurred. He quickly looked away and rubbed his eyes. Tsh, stupid dust. He hadn't cried in years. He wasn't gonna start now. Oh, and Naruto. Link called as Naruto started to turn away. Naruto looked back. Remember what I told you, Link said. About your family. About Ike. Don't mention him. Don't mention me. Not to anyone. Naruto nodded seriously. I know. It stays buried. Link smiled. Good. They raised a hand to each other. A final wave. Then Link vanished in a flash of movement, disappearing back down the road he had come from. Naruto stood there for a moment longer. Then he opened the package. Inside was a long, pointed black hat, simple, travel-worn, and unmistakably similar to the one Link used to wear. Naruto smiled. He put it on. The brim shaded his eyes, and the back of it covered most of his hair, leaving just a bit of his bangs visible in front, moving with the wind. Thanks, sensei, he muttered. Then he turned and walked toward the gates, toward Konoha. For the first time in 6 years, Naruto Uzumaki passed through the village entrance. The guards barely spared him a glance. Good. He kept his head down and made his way through streets that felt both familiar and distant, straight toward the Hokage Tower. Minutes later, he stood in front of the office door. Naruto took a breath, then pushed it open. The past was waiting for him inside. Naruto closed the door behind him and stepped into the office. Hiruzen Sarutobi was buried in paperwork and didn't notice him at first. Naruto smirked. Long time no see, old man. Hiruzen blinked, then looked up. For a second, he just stared. Then he laughed. Well, I'll be damned, he said, pushing his chair back slightly. If I didn't know better, I'd say Link sent me a younger copy of himself. Naruto scratched the back of his head. Yeah. He keeps telling me the outfit's gonna get me killed. Hiruzen's eyes flicked to the orange jumpsuit and he chuckled. He might not be wrong. Naruto dropped into the chair in front of the desk. So, you know why I'm here? Hiruzen nodded. You're here to take the exam. Naruto's grin faded just a little. Yeah, the Genin test. Hiruzen studied him for a moment. You failed twice before. Nervous? Naruto shrugged. A little. Hiruzen smiled kindly. Third time tends to be special. Naruto's usual confidence snapped back into place. Heh, don't worry. I'm passing this time. I expect nothing less, Hiruzen said. The test is in room 205 at the academy. You should hurry. Naruto stood up. Got it. He didn't bother with the door, just leapt out the window. He moved across the rooftops easily, his movements smooth and practiced, nothing like the clumsy kid he used to be. As the academy came into view, Naruto's eyes narrowed slightly. I should probably not show everything, he muttered. No point in making waves on day one. He landed in front of the building, walked inside, and headed up the stairs. Room 205. He stopped in front of the door, knocked 3 times. Inside, Irika Yumino was doing his best to keep a room full of excited, nervous kids under control. "All right, settle down," he said, rubbing his temples. "You're all going to get your turn." He glanced at the man beside him. "Seems like a confident batch this year. Huh, Mizuki?" Mizuki, the silver-haired Chunin, smiled easily. "That's a good thing, isn't it?" Irika nodded, though something about Mizuki's smile always felt thin. The room finally quieted. Then there was a knock at the door. Irika looked up. "That has to be Naruto. Come in." The door opened. Naruto stepped inside. For a moment, the entire class went silent. He looked different, taller, leaner, sharper, and carrying a sword. Eyes turned toward him, some in surprise, some in curiosity, some, especially a few of the girls, in sudden interest. Naruto froze. Irika blinked, then smiled. "Good to see you, Naruto. Take a seat." Naruto glanced around. "Where?" Irika pointed. "There." The empty seat near the front. Naruto followed the direction and felt his eye twitch. Right in front of Sasuke Uchiha. "You have got to be kidding me," he muttered under his breath. Still, he walked over and sat down. Sasuke didn't look at him, but Naruto could feel it. The tension, the curiosity, the unspoken question hanging in the air. He leaned back slightly, smirking to himself. 3 seconds. 2. 1. He waited, because he knew Sasuke was about to speak. 3. 2. 1. Naruto barely moved his lips. Right on cue. "Hey, idiot," Sasuke said without turning fully. "Where'd you get the sword?" Naruto's eye twitched. "None of your business, team." Sasuke clicked his tongue, about to respond. "Enough, both of you," Irika snapped. "Save it. We're starting the exam." The room shifted into uneasy silence as the students lined up one by one. Irika checked his list. First, Uchiha Sasuke. Sasuke walked to the front, calm and confident. The moment he moved, half the girls in the room started whispering and squealing. Naruto leaned back in his chair and stared at the ceiling. "TCH. Here we go again." "Sasuke," Irika said. "Demonstrate the clone technique." Sasuke formed the seals smoothly. With a soft puff of smoke, a perfect copy appeared beside him. "Pass," Irika said, nodding. "Congratulations. You're a genin." The room erupted. Ino and Sakura were the loudest, of course. Sasuke ignored them, took his forehead protector, and returned to his seat like nothing special had happened. One by one, the others went. Sakura passed. Ino passed. Shikamaru passed with a bored yawn. Even Kiba passed. Then, Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto stood. Great. He walked to the front, hands in his pockets, trying not to look like this mattered. But it did. It always did. "Demonstrate the clone technique," Irika said, watching him carefully. Naruto formed the seals. Smoke burst out, and something appeared. It was pale, twisted, slumped on the floor like a sick joke. The room went quiet. Naruto stared at it for half a second. TCH. He drew his sword in one smooth motion, jumped, and brought it down. The thing vanished in smoke. Silence. Irika looked away and sighed. "Naruto, you fail." Naruto's hands clenched. "Yeah, I know." Mizuki watched him with narrowed eyes. "Interesting." He stepped forward. "Irika, come on. He did create something. Doesn't that count for something?" For a moment, Naruto actually looked hopeful. Irika shook his head. "It wasn't a proper clone. Couldn't fight. Couldn't even stand. The exam is about basics." Naruto said nothing. He just turned and walked out. The door closed behind him. Mizuki watched him go and smiled. Yes, he'll do nicely. The sun was already sinking when Naruto found himself sitting on the roof of the academy, legs dangling over the edge, staring out at the village. Konoha looked peaceful from up here. That almost made it worse. TCH. He leaned back on his hands and closed his eyes. Failed again. Same test. Same result. No matter how far he'd come. It felt like some doors just refused to open for him. Brooding doesn't suit you, you know? Naruto opened one eye and glanced back. Mizuki stood a few steps behind him, smiling like always. Mizuki-sensei? Naruto sat up. What are you doing here? Looking for a certain disappointed student, Mizuki said lightly. And I think I found him. Naruto scratched his cheek. I messed up. Mizuki walked closer and sat on the edge of the roof, looking out over the village with him. You know, Naruto, there's more than one way to pass an exam. Naruto blinked. Huh. Mizuki turned to him, eyes gleaming. How would you like a special test? A second chance? Naruto's eyes widened. Are really? Mizuki nodded. Of course. If you succeed, Irika won't have a choice but to pass you. Naruto jumped to his feet. I'm in. What do I have to do? Mizuki smiled. Come closer. I'll explain. Night had fallen by the time Naruto reached the forest outside the village. In front of him lay a massive scroll. The forbidden scroll. He was sweating, panting, sitting against a tree with the scroll spread open in front of him. This thing is huge. His eyes scanned the text. Technique after technique. Dangerous. Complicated. Way above what they taught at the academy. Bunshin. Bunshin. Where is it? He found it. Not the normal one. Something different. Shadow clone. Naruto frowned. What kind of Bunshin uses this much chakra? Still, he remembered Mizuki's words. Learn one technique from the scroll. Bring it to me. You pass. Naruto clenched his fists. All right, let's do it. Hours passed. He collapsed. Got up. Tried again. And again. And again. Sweat soaked his clothes. His arms shook. His head pounded. Come on. He slammed his hands together. Smoke exploded around him. When it cleared, dozens of Narutos stood in the clearing. Naruto froze. Ha! The clones blinked, looked at him, then, we did it. Naruto fell backward, laughing like a maniac. I did it. I finally did it. He lay there staring up at the stars. Link-sensei, I did it. A presence shifted in the trees. Naruto sat up. Irika stepped out of the shadows. Training this late, Naruto? He asked quietly. Naruto grinned and jumped to his feet. Irika-sensei, you're just in time. Look, he gestured to the scroll. I mastered a new Bunshin. Mizuki-sensei said if I bring him this, I pass. Irika's expression changed instantly. Mizuki told you to take this? Naruto nodded. Yeah, he said it was a special test. Irika's face went pale. Naruto dropped the scroll. Now, before Naruto could ask why, Shuriken screamed out of the darkness. Irika moved without thinking. He tackled Naruto out of the way, metal flashing past where his head had been. They hit the ground hard. Irika-sensei! Naruto shouted. A familiar voice laughed from the shadows. So you found him first. Mizuki stepped into the moonlight, a massive shuriken strapped across his back. Irika, you always did get in the way, Mizuki said coldly. Mizuki, Irika said, standing and putting himself between Naruto and him. So it was you. Naruto looked between them, confused. What's going on? Mizuki-sensei said if I give him the scroll I'd pass. Mizuki's smile twisted. Give it to me, Naruto, he said. That's all you have to do. No, Iruka snapped. Naruto, don't listen to him. He used you. Naruto's head started to spin. Used me? Mizuki's eyes narrowed slightly. He was thinking, calculating. Then he smiled again. Well, he said, if you won't hand it over. He slowly reached for the giant shuriken on his back. I'll just take it. The air grew heavy, and Naruto suddenly realized he had walked straight into something far more dangerous than a simple exam. Mizuki's laughter echoed through the trees. He stepped closer, eyes gleaming in the moonlight. Tell me something, Naruto, he said lightly, as if they were discussing homework. Have you ever wondered why the villagers hate you so much? Naruto's breath caught. What? Iruka's eyes widened. Mizuki, stop. Don't say it. Mizuki ignored him. Oh, come on, he said. Don't you think he deserves to know? The real reason. The reason they look at him like that. Naruto felt something cold coil in his stomach. Mizuki? He whispered. No, Iruka shouted. You'll break him. Mizuki's smile only grew wider. The truth, he said, voice dripping with satisfaction, is that you're not just some unlucky orphan, Naruto. He pointed straight at him. You are the container of the nine-tailed fox. The words hit harder than any weapon. Naruto's mind went blank. What? You heard me, Mizuki said. The monster that destroyed this village? The one that killed countless people? Sealed inside you. That's why they hate you. That's why they're afraid of you. Naruto's legs gave out. He fell backward onto the cold forest floor, staring up at the branches and the moon like the world had suddenly stopped making sense. That's not true. Mizuki laughed. It is. You're not a victim, Naruto. You're the cage. Naruto's ears rang. All the looks, all the whispers, all the beatings. His chest hurt. So, Mizuki continued, slowly reaching back and gripping the handle of the massive shuriken. If I kill you and bring back that scroll, I won't just be a hero. He raised the weapon. I'll be a savior. Iruka moved instantly. Naruto, get down. Naruto didn't hear him. He was still trying to breathe. The shuriken flew. Iruka jumped. Pain exploded across his back as the weapon buried itself into him instead. He staggered, coughing, but stayed on his feet. Naruto's eyes snapped back into focus. Iruka-sensei. Iruka fell to one knee, blood staining his clothes. Naruto crawled toward him, shaking. Why? Why would you do that for me? Iruka turned his head slightly, forcing a weak smile. Because I know what it's like, being alone, being hated for something you couldn't control. He coughed. You're not the fox, Naruto. You're just a kid who's been carrying a burden no one should. Naruto's hands trembled. Something broke inside his chest. Run, Iruka said. Take the scroll. Don't let him get it. Naruto hesitated. Then, he grabbed the scroll and ran. He didn't know where. He didn't care. He just ran. Get back here, Mizuki shouted, already chasing after him. That scroll is mine. Iruka tried to stand. His body refused. He collapsed back to his knees, breathing hard, blood pooling beneath him. Naruto, he whispered. The forest swallowed the sound of Naruto's footsteps as he fled deeper into the darkness, carrying a truth that felt heavier than any weapon, and a power he still didn't understand. And behind him, Mizuki ran with murder in his eyes. Naruto didn't stop running. Branches blurred past as he leapt from tree to tree, breath ragged, mind louder than the forest around him. The fox. Inside me, his chest hurt in a way that had nothing to do with exhaustion. Then, he felt someone behind him, He twisted in midair and landed on a thick branch, spinning around. "Irika-sensei," he said, breathing hard. Irika stood a few meters away, leaning against a tree, looking just as battered as before. "Naruto," he said urgently, "give me the scroll. We can't let Mizuki get it." Naruto stared at him for a second, then his eyes narrowed. In a blur, Naruto jumped forward and drove his foot straight into Irika's stomach. The man flew backward and crashed into the base of a tree. "What are you doing?" Irika coughed. "Mizuki is coming. We don't have time for this." Naruto laughed, but there was no humor in it. It was cold, sharp. "You're not Irika-sensei," Naruto said quietly. "He's over there." He pointed to a tree stump. There was a loud crack. The stump vanished in smoke. The real Irika was revealed, still wounded, still kneeling. The Irika Naruto had kicked shimmered and turned back into Mizuki. "Tish." Mizuki clicked his tongue. "Clever brat." Irika forced a small smile. "Good eye, Naruto." Mizuki's expression twisted with anger. "I'm done playing." He ripped the giant shuriken from his back and charged. Irika tried to stand. His legs failed him. So this is it, he thought. Mizuki was only a few steps away. Then he was hit. Hard. A knee smashed into his face and sent him skidding across the forest floor. He rolled to a stop, coughing, and looked up. Naruto stood between him and Irika. His posture was different now. Lower. Sharper. His teeth were clenched. His eyes were burning. "Don't touch him," Naruto said, his voice shaking with fury. "Ever." Irika's eyes widened. "Naruto, run. Get out of here." Naruto didn't move. He smirked. "Not happening," he said. "He lied to me. He tried to kill you. And he thinks he can just walk away." Mizuki laughed as he stood up. "You're still just a kid. Then this is going to be really embarrassing for you," Naruto replied. Mizuki sneered. "I'll kill you first." Naruto brought his hands together. Shadow Clone Jutsu. The forest exploded with smoke. When it cleared, they were everywhere. Dozens. Hundreds. Then more. Clones filled the trees, the ground, the air, all cracking their knuckles, all staring at Mizuki with the same dangerous grin. Mizuki's face went pale. "What?" Naruto pointed. "Get him." He didn't even get to scream properly. The forest shook with the sound of impact after impact. By the time the sun began to rise, the clearing was quiet again. Mizuki lay unconscious in a crater, bruised, broken, and very much defeated. Naruto sat on a rock nearby, breathing hard, every muscle screaming. Irika stared. "They're real," he whispered. "Not illusions. Solid clones." He looked at Naruto like he was seeing him for the first time. Naruto stood up and walked over, then stopped. He looked down at the ground, didn't meet Irika's eyes. "You're probably mad at me," he said quietly. He waited. For anger, for disappointment, for rejection, because that was what he was used to. He didn't know that for the first time in his life, someone was about to tell him he had done everything right. Irika shifted and pushed himself upright, wincing slightly. "Naruto," he said, a small smile forming despite the pain. "Come here. I've got something for you." Naruto froze. His stomach twisted. "This is the part where I get yelled at, isn't it?" he muttered, but he still walked over and stopped in front of Irika. What is it, Irika-sensei?" Irika looked at him for a moment, then said gently, "Close your eyes." Naruto blinked. "Huh. Just do it," Irika said. Naruto hesitated, then shut his eyes tight. He felt Irika move around behind him. Something brushed against his hair. A cool piece of metal touched his forehead. Then Irika stepped back in front of him. All right, Irika said. You can open them now. Naruto opened his eyes. The first thing he noticed, Irika wasn't wearing his headband. The second thing, Naruto's hand flew up to his forehead. The leaf symbol. Real. Eh. Irika smiled. Congratulations, Naruto, he said. You pass. For a second, Naruto didn't breathe, didn't blink, didn't move. I pass. Yes, Irika said. You protected the scroll. You used a jutsu far beyond what we teach here. And more importantly, his smile softened. You didn't run away. Naruto's vision blurred. I really? Irika nodded. Naruto made a strange choking sound. Then he launched forward and hugged Irika as hard as he could. Yes, he shouted. I did it. Irika laughed and awkwardly returned the hug. Careful. I'm still injured, you know? Naruto finally pulled back, grinning from ear to ear. Irika looked toward the village, where the sun was beginning to rise. Come on, he said. Let's get some ramen. My treat. Naruto's eyes lit up. Really? Irika chuckled. Really? They started walking back together. Behind them, Anbu secured Mizuki and disappeared into the trees. Ahead of them, the village slowly woke to a new day. And for the first time in his life, Naruto Uzumaki walked forward not as a burden, but as a shinobi of Konoha.
That's all for now. If you enjoy them, please like, share, and do comment.